Never before has it been more important to pay attention to the difference between content and context. I want you to watch the following clip, which was put out just a few days ago by ABC News with regards to the conflict in Syria.
This video right here appearing to show Turkey's military bombing Kurd civilians in a Syrian border town. The Kurds who fought alongside the U.S. against ISIS. Now, horrific reports of atrocities committed by Turkish-backed fighters on those very allies. A reporter, take a look at this live streaming video when a convoy is hit by a Turkish airstrike. President Trump ordering about 1,000 U.S. troops to withdraw from northern Syria. Since pulling U.S. troops from the region, hundreds of ISIS prisoners and sympathizers have gone free. About 200,000 Kurds have been displaced, and Kurdish leaders now looking for help from unlikely new allies. ABC's Ian Pannell is in Syria to lead us off.
This video, obtained by ABC News, appears to show the fury of the Turkish attack on the border town of Tal Abyad 2 nights ago.
Here we can see the disastrous consequences of Donald Trump's anti-war stance in the Middle East. The only problem is, this is completely fake news. What you actually just watched was a video pulled from a nighttime shoot at the Knob Creek gun range in West Point, Kentucky in 2017. Zero Hedge reports ABC News was just busted using 2-year-old gun range footage while reporting on Turkey, quote, slaughtering the Kurds in the wake of a U.S. withdrawal from the region. This instance was so egregious, ABC News was forced to admit that they had used fake footage, remove it, and issue a retraction. You can see this tweet here. ABC World News, correction. We've taken down the video that aired on World News Tonight, Sunday, and Good Morning America this morning that appeared to be from the Syrian border immediately after questions were raised about its accuracy. ABC News regrets the error. It was interesting to see the left wing and the right wing finally unite on one issue. And that issue is their love of eternal war. In a press conference Wednesday afternoon, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi accused President Trump of having a meltdown during a meeting with congressional Democratic leaders after a contingent of Republicans voted with Democrats in the House to pass a motion condemning the withdrawal from Syria. 129 Republicans in support, with 60 GOP lawmakers opposed. And it's not just the mainstream rank-and-file corporate politicians that are pro-war. All of the sudden, liberal firebrand AOC has flip-flopped, and as InfoWars reports, has now come out in support of the Syrian war. After months and months of criticizing U.S. involvement in forever wars, Rep. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has had a sudden change of mind, tweeting Tuesday that pulling U.S. troops out of Syria could have catastrophic consequences. She tweets, Trump's sudden withdrawal from northern Syria and endorsement of Turkey's actions could have catastrophic consequences and risks laying the ground for immense violence and suffering. We can pursue the strategy to stop our endless wars without endangering the lives of innocent people. You know, if your biggest concern about the world is the CO2 from cow farts, I wonder how much CO2 is launched into the atmosphere through endless war. In fact, only one other prominent politician that I'm aware of has been vocally supportive of President Trump's decision. You can see here, Rand Paul blocks Senate Democrats' rebuke of Trump's Syria pullout. Senator Rand Paul from Kentucky shut down an effort by Democrat Chuck Schumer to rebuke President Trump over his decision to withdraw U.S. troops from northern Syria. Schumer attempted to get consent on Thursday to bring up the House-passed resolution, arguing that, quote, "we're in real trouble," according to The Hill. On Tuesday, the House voted 354 to 60, opposes the decision to end certain United States efforts to prevent Turkish military operations against Syrian Kurdish forces in northeast Syria. Paul blasted Schumer, saying, "He should come to the floor and say that we are ready to declare war. We are ready to authorize force, and we are going to stick our troops in the middle of this messy, five-sided civil war, where we would be ostensibly opposed to the Turkish government that has made an incursion." The Kentucky Republican added that the House-passed resolution would do nothing to fix the problem. On Wednesday, Paul told CNN's Jake Tapper that pulling U.S. troops from northern Syria may be the best thing that ever happened to the Kurds, adding that this was President Donald Trump's decision. It was the best thing not only for our troops, but also the best way to adhere to the Constitution. The Constitution says you don't declare a war unless Congress votes on it. And who are we going to declare a war against? Our ally, Turkey? The Free Syrian Army that used to be our ally? Syrian President Bashar al-Assad? He was told by the Turks they were coming one way or another, and they had 50 troops. 50 troops don't stop 10,000 troops. I think he made the right decision. I'm reminded of Beirut, Lebanon, when we made the wrong decision and had 300 Marines in barracks that weren't well protected. So I think he made the right decision, Paul said, adding, "This may be the best thing that ever happened to the Kurds, because they need a protector and Syria willing to stay. We had been preventing them having talk to Assad. Now they've made an alliance with Assad. And the irony of this is, it may end up being the best thing that ever happened to them." And of course, then, it was very interesting to see Senator Paul on The View get hit from both the left and the right for his support of the president's pullout of Syria. I remember a time when the left was staunchly opposed to war, but that all seems to have changed with the election of Barack Obama, in which case they now suddenly see the wisdom in war, the strength provided by having soldiers overseas in endless wars. Of course, none of these people have to stand guard. None of these people are at risk. None of them have friends, families, or loved ones whose lives are in danger. They can sit there, wealthy, privileged, and comfortable, and make the case that other people should be over there in war zones because they've been told to say this is good policy. Because we all know nobody gets on television who hasn't already sold their soul. This allows the powers that be to create the perception that it is unanimous among those that are educated on these issues, and they are all in agreement. This allows them to cast people like Rand Paul, his father Ron Paul, and President Trump as these bizarre outliers with crazy ideas, not thoughtful, well-reasoned individuals. In fact, the daughter of Senator John McCain one of America's most famous war hawks, Meghan McCain, who couldn't pass a military PT test if she trained for it for the next 5 years, came out and unironically said, Trump and Rand Paul have, quote, blood on their hands because of Syria. And I think to myself, what a strange upside-down world where the peacemakers are the ones that are accused of having blood on their hands. Because after all, the left and the right are both roundly condemning this move towards peace, because you can't establish a new world order or a one-world government without a little war. I mean, did you really think all it would take is bland platitudes and a stupid little song? Astute observers have also noted that it seems like every time Donald Trump threatened to wind down these overseas wars, all of a sudden you would see the threat of impeachment crop up in the news, some even going as far as threatening to jail the president once he leaves office. Former Congressman Ron Paul asks, impeachment or CIA coup? This is authored by Ron Paul via the Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity. Now, is this about politics? Yes, but there may be more to it than that. It may appear that the Democratic Party, furious over Hillary Clinton's 2016 loss, is the driving force behind this ongoing attempt to remove Donald Trump from office, but at every turn, we see the fingerprints of the CIA and its allies in the U.S. deep state. And Matt Taibbi, who I often disagree with, but in this case he is right, he has called it a government in exile. All these deep state Hillary Clinton supporters are part of this government in exile, the resistance. Continuing, in August 2016, a former acting director of the CIA, Mike Morrell, wrote an extraordinary article in the New York Times accusing Donald Trump of being an agent of the Russian Federation. Morrell was clearly using his intelligence career as a way of bolstering his claim that Trump was a Russian spy. After all, the CIA should know such a thing. But the claim was a lie. Former CIA Director John Brennan accused President Trump of treason and of being in the pocket of Putin for meeting with the Russian president in Helsinki and accepting his word that Russia did not meddle in the U.S. election. To this day, there has yet to be any evidence presented that the Russian government did interfere. Brennan openly called on patriotic Republicans to act against this traitor. Brennan and his deep state counterparts, James Comey at the FBI, and former Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, launched an operation using what we now know is the fake Steele dossier to spy on the Trump presidential campaign and even attempt to entrap Trump campaign employees. Notice a pattern here? Now we hear that the latest trigger for impeachment is a CIA officer assigned to the White House who filed a whistleblower complaint against the president over something he heard from someone else that the president said in the Ukraine phone call. Shockingly, according to multiple press reports, the rules for CIA whistleblowing were recently changed, dropping the requirement that the whistleblower have direct, first-hand knowledge of the wrongdoing. Just before this complaint was filed, the rule change allowed hearsay or second-hand information to be accepted. That seems strange. Why, yes, Ron, it does. As it turns out, the CIA whistleblower, lurking around the White House, got the important things wrong. As there was no quid pro quo discussed, and there was no actual request to investigate Biden or his son. The Democrats have suddenly come out in praise of whistleblowers. Well, not exactly. Pelosi still wants to prosecute actual whistleblower, Ed Snowden, but she's singing the praises of this fake CIA whistleblower. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer once warned Trump that if you take on the intelligence community, they have 6 ways from Sunday at getting back at you. It's not hard to ask whether this is a genuine impeachment effort or a CIA coup. Now you may be asking yourself, well, why does the CIA want to get rid of Donald Trump so bad? And to answer that question, I think you got to look at this idea of the government that is now in exile, the globalists, those that want to establish one world government. What they need is more war, regime change, a puppet government, leaders around the world that they get to control. I mean, you can't establish full spectrum dominance with free and independent nations where their people have a voice now, can you? And Donald Trump opposes this. He's in the way. And if this is the case that they are acting in this manner, they have begun to act in a fashion similar to the ancient Roman deep state known as the Praetorian Guard. The Praetorian Guard were the personal bodyguards of the emperor. They were the only people that were allowed to have swords in his presence. But what they found out is, while they defended the emperor's life, you can also make a lot of demands when you're the only people with weapons allowed that close proximity to power. And so what would happen is the Praetorian Guard became the de facto rulers of Rome. If they wanted a particular policy, if they wanted a pay raise, whatever it is they wanted, they would get. And if they didn't get it, they would kill that emperor, and then they would find any old schmuck that they could pull out from underneath a bed, make him the emperor, and guess what? Then they got their way. So what happens when you get James Comey and John Brennan, who both voted communist during the Cold War, and yet who were not only able to work at the CIA and FBI, but actually rose to the top? Coincidence? Or infiltration? And if our intelligence agencies have become a termite-infested nest of communists and communist sympathizers attempting to establish a new world order, you can begin to appreciate why the Romans found it necessary to abolish the Praetorian Guard, their deep state, forever. When you look at the particular area of expertise of these intelligence agencies, what is it they really excel at? Well, it's regime change. Now, if you believe the number that the CIA has overthrown as few as 7 governments, or that between just 1947 and 1989, the United States tried to change other nations' governments as many as 72 times. There's no doubt this is what they do. This is what they're good at. And so this all ties in with the fake news I discussed at the beginning, because the deep state has been infiltrating mainstream news organizations. And you can see here in this article by the Daily Caller, 15 former spooks who work at CNN and MSNBC now. CNN added to its stable of retired FBI and CIA officials Friday by hiring Andrew McCabe, who was fired by the Bureau due to lack of candor during an internal probe. McCabe is the 10th ex-FBI or CIA official hired by the network in recent years, with MSNBC having hired 5. A vast majority of the 15 CNN and MSNBC analysts have pushed the now debunked theory that the Trump campaign conspired with Russia. Okay, you can see here. We have Jack Shaver, a media critic who writes for Politico, noted the potential pitfalls of networks like CNN and MSNBC having a stable of ex-spies and G-men as paid on-air contributors. He goes on to say, but the downside of outsourcing national security coverage to the TV spies is obvious. They aren't in the business of breaking news or uncovering secrets. Their first loyalty, and this is no slam, is to the agency from which they hail. And not only did MSNBC and CNN use those people as their sources, they hired them as their news analysts. So if you turn on CNN or MSNBC, it was basically state TV. It was CIA TV. He told Tucker Carlson March 26, and we know what it is the CIA excels at. So running through real quick, you can see some of these guys that have been hired. And this is just what's hiding in plain sight. This is just what they show you. You can only imagine what's going on behind the scenes. CNN hired James Clapper, Director of National Intelligence under Obama. They hired Andrew McCabe, former FBI Director, James Baker, former FBI General Counsel, Josh Campbell, former aide to James Comey, Asha Rangappa, former FBI Special Agent and leading collusion conspiracy theorist, Stephen Hall, former CIA Moscow station, chief and outspoken critic of Trump, Phil Mudd, former FBI and CIA official, Susan Hennessy, former attorney for the National Security Agency, Samantha Vinograd, former advisor to the Obama administration's National Security Council, James Gagliano, former FBI supervisory special agent, and then MSNBC has hired, of course, John Brennan, the former CIA director and communist, Frank Figliuzzi, former FBI assistant director for counterintelligence, Chuck Rosenberg, former chief of staff to James Comey, Malcolm Nance, former naval chief petty officer, and Jeremy Bash, former CIA chief of staff. And you can see here, in this sense, the CIA seems to be at war with itself. A former CIA officer says, and this is in regards to the Ukraine impeachment efforts that morphed from the original Russian impeachment efforts. Former CIA officer, Trump impeachment hoax, very similar to a KGB operation. So this is via the USAWatchdog.com. Former CIA officer and whistleblower Kevin Shipp says the so-called whistleblower the Democrats are using to try and impeach President Trump is part of another deep state hoax. Shipp says, this is not a whistleblower. Let's start with that. This is a leaker. This person did not have anything to blow the whistle on. Everything written in this document is written not by this leaker, but by attorneys, and it is hearsay. There is no evidence in it whatsoever. It is not a whistleblower complaint. He did not go through the proper channels. He went directly to Congressman Adam Schiff, and people have got to understand this is another shadow government deep state operation actually trying to remove the president. What they did was real sly. If they would have brought this leaker ahead, they would have taken him apart. the whistleblower or leaker would have been investigated. Everyone connected with him would have been investigated. So what they craftily did was put him under whistleblower statute so he could not be investigated. The mysterious sources he was using could not be investigated, and that's their plan. That's what they did, and also actually changed the whistleblower rules to include hearsay, which would have been thrown out of court just recently here. This is a deep state operation like Russia Collusion 2.0. This is another criminal operation to impeach Donald Trump. This is very similar to a KGB or SVR operation. Schipp says this type of hoax could not be perpetrated on the public without the help and coordination of the mainstream media. What they do when they do operations, and they are so full of themselves, and they have used them so many times before, the reason why people don't realize this is the news media, the arm of the Democratic Party, and the deep state are lying, like Adam Schiff, like CBS and others are lying about the facts. So people watching these news organizations don't realize how stupid this is and what essentially is another coup. Planners of the first President Trump coup, high-ranking rogue FBI employees, used what they called a media leak strategy to leak information to the propaganda press and then use the articles written by them to back up their phony narrative. Schipp says this is happening again with the latest CIA leaker, and this is the Ukraine story. Schipp contends this leaker plant got this false information and gave it to Adam Schiff, and then they created their own news stories about this. Then this whistleblower used those news stories to try to add credibility to the garbage he's put in the complaint. That is exactly what they did here. Schipp says one of the first to be charged in the Russian collusion hoax, in his opinion, will be former CIA Director John Brennan again, and he will roll over and sing like a bird, Schipp says. Brennan has been known to be spineless. Schipp continues. It goes all the way to the former President of the United States, Barack Obama, George Soros, and globalism. It all leads to that, and they know it. It is more important for them to stay out of prison than win the election of 2020. They are going to dramatically hurt themselves because this is going to come out. Trump is going to win in a landslide, and a lot of them are going to lose their seats. Pelosi does not care about that. What she cares about, and what is really going on behind the scenes, is that it's this deep, dark, criminal, globally connected operation, including the Clinton Foundation, that they are trying to cover for. And while you may be thinking this all sounds too extraordinary to be true, Brennan and Clapper are taking it very seriously. As of Saturday 10/19, CIA analysts lawyer up as Brennan and Clapper ensnared an expanding Russiagate probe. CIA analysts involved in the intelligence assessment of Russia's activities during the 2016 U.S. election have begun to hire attorneys as Attorney General William Barr expands his investigation into the origins of the Russia probe led by U.S. Attorney John Durham. This guy. The prosecutor conducting the review, Connecticut U.S. Attorney John Durham, has expressed his intent to review a number of current and former intelligence officials involved in examining Russia's efforts to interfere in the 2016 presidential election, including former CIA Director John Brennan and former National Intelligence James Clapper. NBC learned of the lawyering up from 3 former CIA officials familiar with the matter, while 2 more anonymous leakers claim there's tension between the Justice Department and the CIA over what classified documents Durham has access to. Now, there's a smile you gotta love right there. There's William Barr. Looking pretty confident, I have to say. With Barr's approval, Durham has expanded his staff and the time frame under scrutiny, according to a law enforcement official directly familiar with the matter. And he is now looking into conduct past Donald Trump's inauguration in January 2017, a Trump administration official said. One Western intelligence official familiar with Durham's investigation leaked that Durham has been asking foreign officials questions related to former Trump campaign aide George Papadopoulos, who was fed the rumor that Russia had dirt on Hillary Clinton by a Maltese professor, Joseph Mifsud. Well, U.S. media has sought to portray Mifsud as a Russian asset. The self-described member of the Clinton Foundation has stronger ties to the West. According to congressional testimony given by Papadopoulos last October, as well as statements he's made over Twitter, the whole thing was an FBI setup, as a woman in London who was the FBI's legal attaché in the UK had a personal relationship with Bob Mueller, and was the one who recommended he meet with Mifsud in Rome. To be clear, a woman in London who was the FBI's legal attaché in UK had a personal relationship to Bob Mueller, encouraged me to meet Joseph Mifsud in Rome in March 2016, and introduced the famous Bruce Orr to the top UK prosecutor 4 days before the Trump Tower meeting. As the theory goes, Mifsud, a U.S. intelligence asset, feeds Papadopoulos the rumor that Russia has Hillary Clinton's emails shortly after he announces he's going to join the Trump campaign. Papadopoulos repeats the email rumor to Australian diplomat Alexander Downer, who alerts Australia's intelligence community, which notifies the FBI, which then launches Operation Crossfire Hurricane, during which the FBI sent multiple spies, including a honeypot, to infiltrate the Trump campaign, notably the former FBI employee Peter Strzok flew to London to meet with Downer the day after Crossfire Hurricane was launched. Well, Strzok's boss, Bill Priestap, was in London the day before the Downer-Papadopoulos encounter. We have now pinned Peter Strzok's boss, Bill Priestap, in London the week of May 6, 2016, and on the 9th, the day before Alexander Downer was sent to spy on me and record our meeting. Congress must release the transcripts and embarrass the deep state. And if this is all true, Durham has a lot to untangle, including the Clinton DNC-funded Steele dossier. So to bring this all back to the fake Syrian war coverage, we can see here when Trump launched the missile strike on Syria and it looked like he was going to lead us into war, CNN gave him positive coverage, with one host going as far as saying, Trump became president tonight. It was a return to global norms, and I would bet a dime to a dollar if he had gone into further military action, the news reports you would see on Donald Trump, instead of being 90% negative, would very likely be 90% positive. And you've been seeing this agitation for war in the news media for years now. Going back to John Kerry and his little children being gassed with over there and in their jammies and how it made him cry. The Syria girl who tweeted support for Donald Trump's strikes in Syria, and yet at the time of the picture and the article, she was living in Turkey, so she's holding this sign up apparently in front of, I don't know, some rubble, but it's not rubble from a missile strike. The fake news has just been laid on thick, and it's all been pro-war. I mean, look at this screenshot the other day from the MSN homepage. We have here a Trump orders Turkey sanctions as U.S. scrambles for Syria exit, the Associated Press. And keep in mind, none of these pictures are just, it's all chosen very specifically for this particular image. You have the Turkish flag, and you have the sun going down, and you have this ominous shadow. And it appears that he's giving the devil rock and roll horns. I mean, what are we supposed to believe? Because Trump withdrew from Syria, the KISS army is now going to invade and massacre civilians. It's just really, really dumb when you stop and look at it. And so on October 14th, Trump tweeted, and I think this is a very rational response here, after defeating 100% of the ISIS caliphate, I largely moved our troops out of Syria. Let Syria and Assad protect the Kurds and fight Turkey for their own land. I said to my generals, why should we be fighting for Syria and Assad to protect the land of our enemy? Anyone who wants to assist Syria in protecting the Kurds is good with me, whether it is Russia, China, or Napoleon Bonaparte. I hope they all do great. We are 7,000 miles away. And maybe those that are agitating and advocating for war, instead of sending other people's children and other people's families overseas, maybe they should go over themselves. Maybe Ben Shapiro should go over there. Maybe Whoopi Goldberg should have a rifle and do some push-ups in the sand. You know, maybe these pro-war guys should go over and they should do their own dirty work. You know, if they're so concerned with the timely withdrawal or a reasoned slow withdrawal, you know, how do you end a war? Sooner or later, it's got to end. We've been in the Middle East now for 20 years, or going on 20 years. And I think we should look at the words of Congressman Ron Paul, who says, how do we withdraw from the Middle East? Well, we just marched in, so we should just march out. And with a pivotal election coming up in 2020, it pays to remember that it appears the only thing that is preventing an all-out third front from opening in these endless Middle Eastern wars is the efforts of Senator Rand Paul and President